They were never meant to be found, stones without quarries, glyphs without language, cities without names. The earth swallowed them, but time grew impatient and spat them back. No scholar dares claim certainty. No map holds their full shape. You are about to walk through dig sites where reason breaks down. This is not history. This is the unwritten remainder, the hour the past refuses to explain. Welcome to Unburied Mysteries. Hidden in the dense, mosquito-choked jungles of Amapá, Brazil, is a site so overshadowed by its more famous cousin to the south that most have never even heard its name. They call it the Stonehenge of the Amazon, but that label shrinks it. On a grassy hill near Calçoene lies a ring of 127 granite monoliths, each weighing several tons. They rise like vertebrae through the soil, spiraling in a strange helical tilt that doesn't match any known indigenous structure. But it's not just their shape that haunts archaeologists. It's the pattern of absence. The stones form a near circle, but one quadrant is left conspicuously vacant, as if awaiting something that never arrived, or something deliberately removed. And then there's the staircase. Shallow notches carved into select stones, too narrow for feet, but too intentional to dismiss. A solar alignment suggests astronomical tracking, yet the angles are off by a degree and a half, precisely enough to raise questions without providing answers. When researchers tried to date the monoliths, they expected something colonial, or at best late pre-Columbian. What they found was older, potentially 2,000 years old, maybe more, but the true disturbance came from the carvings buried beneath. Near the base of one fractured stone, a pattern emerged, a double spiral etched into sandstone, worn smooth by time. Identical spirals have been found 5,000 miles away, on standing stones in Ireland. This isn't a claim of transatlantic migration, not exactly, but it unravels the notion of isolated development. Indigenous traditions in this region speak of sky people who built with wind and stars. The legend is often dismissed, but in light of this site's clear solar alignment and spiraling geometry, the oral history begins to sting with truth disguised as myth. Some believe the missing stones were removed intentionally by early Portuguese explorers fearing pagan power. Others think they were never placed, reserved for an alignment that hasn't occurred yet. Satellite scans show underground anomalies near the monoliths, long rectangular voids, no more than a meter below the surface. Some believe these are tombs, others insist they're time markers. One local elder described them as the resting places of names never spoken aloud. Excavation is restricted by thick jungle and legal protections, but every year the soil shifts slightly, exposing more stone, more fragments of geometry, more questions. And then there are the obsidian shards, obsidian not native to this region. A geological analysis traced the source to the Andes, over 1,200 miles away. The people who created this site transported volcanic glass across rainforest, river, and ravine, without wheels, pack animals, or roads. What for? No blades, no tools were found, only beads, perfect spheres of black glass, buried symmetrically in pairs, spaced exactly 9.2 inches apart. Who was meant to wear them? Some fringe theorists whisper about the Amazonian Codex, a lost manuscript said to describe a map of the stars from a non-human perspective. While there's no proof such a text exists, certain alignments in Calçoene mirror constellations best viewed from the southern hemisphere as seen in 2300 BCE. This isn't speculation, it's astronomy. The site tracks the solstice, yes, but also follows a celestial migration pattern no longer visible with the naked eye. So what happens when an ancient monument records the sky, not as it is, but as it was, and not for us, but for something that looked up from somewhere else? The stones remain unmoved. The jungle continues its slow, reclaiming crawl, and somewhere beneath the moss, the spiral deepens. During a drone scan in 2020, researchers discovered a strange phenomenon. The area inside the circle reflected 1.3 degrees colder than the jungle around it. Despite open sunlight, this cold pocket wasn't visible to the eye, and it wasn't consistent. It appeared only during twilight hours at the winter solstice. No geothermal activity explains it. No airflow patterns support it. The stone seems to drain heat, briefly and deliberately, like a breath being held. This prompted a re-examination of the site's spatial ratios. One researcher noticed that the central ellipse, the area where the ground cools, matched the proportions of the human cochlea, the spiral cavity in the inner ear. Could this site have been designed not just to measure the stars, but to listen? And if so, what was it waiting to hear? One theory posits that Calçoene was part of a hemispheric acoustic network, built not to amplify voice, but to amplify silence. Similar stone spirals have been found from Patagonia to Guatemala. None identical, but all sharing that central vacancy. As if a sacred absence connects them, in recent years ceremonial artifacts have been unearthed just outside the circle. Carved masks with open mouths, always facing inward, not a single depiction of speech, only expressions of awe, fear, or listening. And that may be the most unsettling truth of all. The builders of Calçoene may not have come to say anything. They may have built it to hear something calling back. In the blistering expanse of southern Nevada, just west of the Amargosa Dunes, there's a plateau locals avoid after dark. At its center lies a circle of monoliths, partially buried and fractured, their edges blackened, as if licked by fire centuries ago. This place is called Dead Horse Ridge, though no records explain why. But the stone circle at its peak, that's what keeps archaeologists awake. 12 stones remain upright. 4 have toppled. All are etched with the same glyph, a crown with no face. The carvings predate nearby petroglyphs by centuries, perhaps even millennia. Carbon dating of the surrounding sediment puts them at around 3,200 BCE, making them older than the earliest known cultures in this region. Yet, none of the local indigenous traditions claim them. Stranger still, no fire could have naturally scorched these stones without leaving signs of vegetation burn. Yet the earth around them is untouched. It's as if the flames came from within the rock itself. When a team from a Las Vegas university conducted a partial excavation in 2007, they expected nothing more than scattered quartz. Instead, they unearthed fragments of obsidian blades, delicately worked, microscopically thin, and scattered in a spiral pattern around the inner rim of the circle. These weren't tools of war or utility. They were ritual objects, perhaps offerings or weapons never meant to be used. What disturbed researchers most was the fact that the blades, when pieced together, formed no recognizable weapon, but rather a jagged, crown-like arc, too large for any human head. And yet the craftsmanship was precise, ritualistic. Some have theorized that the site served as a coronation ground, but for who or what remains unknown. Others suggest it was a site of exile, where something was crowned before being burned and forgotten. There are no bones, no ash, only the whisper of something enthroned and then destroyed. After the glyphs at Dead Horse Ridge were catalogued, researchers began noticing something disturbing. Similar crown symbols had been found 100 miles away, carved faintly into canyon walls along the Mormon Mesa region. But those glyphs were always incomplete, like echoes. Only at Dead Horse Ridge does the crown appear whole. Aerial lidar revealed a hexagonal formation of smaller stone piles surrounding the main circle. At the heart of each, a single flat obsidian disc. They reflect sunlight violently, so much so that one researcher referred to them as sight traps, disorienting anyone standing in the center of the ring. Could this have been part of a ceremonial disorientation ritual, or were the stones arranged to blind something, or someone, that once stood at the center? The crown glyphs offer no answers, but in every depiction, they are split, cracked down the middle, as if power itself was broken here. Locals have long avoided Dead Horse Ridge after sunset, not just out of superstition, but because of what they see. Multiple accounts describe brief flashes of violet light between the stones, like flares without fire. Sometimes it's a pulse, other times it's a blink, and in some cases, it's said to mirror lightning, but without a storm in sight. Thermal cameras have captured sudden temperature drops around specific stones by as much as 15 degrees in under 30 seconds, only to return to normal. Nothing in the environment accounts for this. No vents, no magnetic anomalies, just silence and light. Some refer to it as the crown's breath. Others believe it's the stone remembering what it once held. A geologist once proposed it was piezoelectric discharge, but that doesn't explain the patterns. The lights seem to pulse in time with each other, like a warning system that hasn't received a signal in centuries. The tallest stone, cracked but still standing, sits in the direct center of the circle. It's partially hollow. When struck, even lightly, it emits a deep, sustained hum, barely audible to the human ear, but picked up clearly on equipment. It resonates at exactly 18.4 Hz, a frequency just below the human threshold for perception, often associated with feelings of dread, nausea, and hallucination. This is the same frequency found in certain military-grade acoustic weapons, and also in catacomb sites across ancient Europe. Infrasound, the kind that bypasses reason and speaks directly to the limbic system, the part of the brain tied to emotion and memory. Was this intentional? Did the builders understand sound the way we understand geometry? And if so, what kind of ceremony or sentencing used fear itself as an instrument? The sound doesn't fade like a bell. It holds, long enough for a listener to wonder whether they're still hearing it or imagining it. Just below the topsoil layer, under a ring of sootless black, researchers found metal shards unlike anything native to the region. These were not copper, nor bronze, nor iron. Spectral analysis showed traces of vanadium, titanium, and an unknown compound, one that didn't match any modern alloy database. The shards are curved, polished, and unnervingly warm to the touch when first uncovered, despite cool surrounding temperatures. No tools or binding materials were found, just these fragments, and the ring of charred rock above them. One shard bears a symbol no one has translated, a split circle intersected by 3 vertical lines. It appears to match no known writing system, not Sumerian, not Olmec, not Navajo, not even fictional or fringe. It simply doesn't exist anywhere else. Whatever shattered at Dead Horse Ridge may not have been a monument. It may have been a container, and something once held inside it wanted out. In the highlands of the Cordillera Mountains in northern Philippines, a strange funeral tradition defies the rules of gravity and death alike. On the sheer cliffs near Sagada, wooden coffins hang from iron pegs, dangled dozens of feet above the valley floor. Some are suspended openly, others wedged into small alcoves, as if the dead were meant to listen to the wind. This isn't a tourist installation. These are actual burial sites, dating back centuries. Some still hold bones, but here's where the mystery begins. Many of these coffins are far older than the local elders can account for, hundreds of years older, and in some cases carved in styles not native to current tribal craftsmanship. Why would someone bury their dead on vertical cliff faces, inaccessible without ropes or scaffolding? The answer isn't religious, it's protective. The locals believe it keeps the soul from being trapped underground. But the practice begins long before Christianity ever arrived, and no one remembers who started it. A series of discoveries in the Echo Valley region just outside Sagada have deepened the mystery. Inside several dry caves high up the cliff wall, archaeologists discovered older coffins, smaller, narrower, many of them stacked in bundles, as if meant for children or individuals in fetal position. The wood used is now extinct in the region. The carvings, geometric ridges resembling wind currents, not symbols of death. One box was found lodged halfway into the wall, as if caught mid-fall and wedged in stone. It contained a skull with dental wiring made of gold, far older than any tribal metallurgy in this region was capable of. Filipino goldwork does exist, but not in this mountain region, not in this way. What's more, none of these caves have water flow or mineral staining. They've always been dry, untouched by erosion. That suggests the tombs were placed intentionally, not just above, but away from the breath of earth, almost like they were meant to never rot. While studying burial orientations, one atmospheric researcher made a chilling observation. The hanging coffins and cave tombs are not randomly placed. In fact, they align nearly perfectly with prevailing typhoon winds that strike Luzon from the Pacific. This is not symbolic. This is architectural. The coffins are angled to face wind corridors, not sunrise or stars. Some speculate it was to allow spirits to ride the storm, a notion supported by the oral phrase, passed down in Igorot tradition. The soul that rides wind never forgets its name. Others propose a darker explanation. That wind wasn't escape, it was exile. Perhaps some of the dead weren't meant to rest, but to be carried away, permanently. The precision of the angles across generations points to deliberate engineering, not ritual guesswork. Who began measuring wind in the highlands? And why did the practice suddenly vanish in the 1800s, with no clear replacement? During a drone-assisted scan in 2019, researchers captured high-resolution imagery beneath the coffins, places no human had seen clearly due to danger or altitude. What they found were carvings into the limestone wall, obscured by age and mineral buildup. Some resembled winged shapes, others a form of coiling smoke, and in several cases, a distinct pattern repeated, 3 vertical lines topped by an inverted V. No one has translated the markings. They do not match Baybayin, the ancient Philippine script. They also don't appear in other highland engravings. This suggests they were either imported or uniquely created for the tomb walls. But why right under coffins no one was meant to see? Local spiritualists believe these are calls, instructions for the wind, a kind of vertical prayer, launched into the sky instead of whispered into soil. But if that's true, who were these prayers meant for, and what happens when the wind remembers? In a deeper recess of one of the Echo Valley caves, a narrow coffin was recovered intact. Inside was a mummified skeleton, preserved in mountain air. The body showed no signs of trauma, but its skull was wrong. The jawbone extended unusually far, creating a serpentine curve of bone and teeth. No known pathology matches it. No known tribe practiced such deformation. This isn't just rare, it's biologically unexplained. Local elders refused to let the body be removed from the cave, but the team that examined it in situ confirmed the jaw was not bound post-mortem. The bone grew that way. No other mummies in the region show this feature, just this one. A singular anomaly in a field of silent bodies. A solitary whisper screaming in bone. And then there's the fact the coffin was locked shut, with woven vines grown into the wood, as if nature had tried to seal it from inside. All across Sagada, the tradition of hanging coffins simply stopped in the mid-1800s, not gradually, abruptly. One generation ended it without explanation, and there's no oral story to explain why. One theory blames colonial pressure, but there are no recorded bans, and in many other tribal areas, older practices continued in secret, but not here. The cliffs remained, and still do, haunted by empty pegs, abandoned ropes, half-carved boxes never raised. The few remaining elders speak of a wind that never returned one year, a wind that once carried voices. One old man, blind in both eyes, claimed that his grandfather told him. The cliffs fell silent, and we heard something listening back. Maybe the dead weren't buried to rest. Maybe they were anchored, forced to stay between here and somewhere else. And when the wind stopped calling, the living stopped hanging, as if the contract was over, or broken. Beneath the jagged spine of Mount Owen, in New Zealand's South Island, a limestone cave gave up a secret no one saw coming. Explorers in the 1980s, mapping a network of karst tunnels, broke through a thin wall of brittle calcite into a hollow chamber, unnaturally dry and colder than any part of the cave system around it. At first, they thought it was just another cavern, until their lights caught something buried in the chalky soil. Bone, feathers, claws, intact. A near-complete skeleton of a giant moa bird, extinct for over 500 years. But it wasn't the bird that broke the rules. It was the condition of the body, soft tissues mummified, no water damage, no bacterial decay. It was as if the creature had just died last week. Then came the real question: how did it get in? The chamber is completely sealed, no known natural access. The skeleton was whole, undisturbed, no claw marks, no debris trail, no predator. It had simply been placed there and sealed. Forensics teams were stunned. The skeleton's massive femurs and spinal column were untouched. No signs of crushing, dragging, or even decomposition. This was not a kill site, nor a trap. The bird had not been hunted or starved. It appeared to have lain down, folded its wings, and died peacefully in a chamber that shouldn't have existed. More disturbing was the position: perfect anatomical alignment. Skull bowed slightly forward, talons crossed, like a ritual, like a pose. And around the body, in the powdery floor, were small circular divots, each exactly 3 inches wide, spaced evenly, 12 in total. But they weren't footprints. They were too shallow, too precise. Instruments confirmed metallic traces, possibly bronze or copper, but no tools were recovered. Was the moa placed there by someone? And if so, who sealed the chamber afterward? There are no local legends of burial rituals involving animals, no known prehistoric societies capable of sealing chambers so thoroughly. And the strangest part, no other bones were found inside. A month after the remains were extracted, bone specialists discovered something no one had seen at first glance. Carvings, shallow, rhythmic notches, etched into the underside of the left rib cage. Not bite marks, not tool tests. These were deliberate incisions, following an angular sequence. The patterns weren't symmetrical. They shifted subtly, almost like script, but unlike any Polynesian, Maori, or known oceanic glyph system. Linguists were called in, then cryptographers. Still, no one could decode it. One pattern, repeated on 3 ribs, caught their attention: an angular swirl with 7 internal slashes, always beside a triangle. One expert theorized it was a form of chronological record, a life counter. Others believed it to be a map, though what it pointed to was unclear. Still, the eerie fact remained: the carvings were made before the bird's death, meaning someone carved its bones while it lived, or just before it was sealed inside a hollow world that no natural force could explain. Geologists studied the thin wall that separated the vault from the rest of the cave. It wasn't natural collapse, nor was it erosion. The stone was intentionally pressed together, sealed with a kind of mineral compression technique no one had seen before. Fused, not stacked. Some theorized it was an ancient mortar technique, using calcite slurry under pressure. Here's what broke the consensus: the pattern matched no known cultural style. The wall was smoothed from the inside out, as though sealed from within, after the moa had been placed. The pressure required would have collapsed the chamber, yet it didn't. It stayed intact, silent, cold, undisturbed for what could be hundreds, maybe thousands of years. The wall contained no tool marks, and no fingerprints of water erosion, sediment layering, or collapse. Someone or something had sealed a living creature inside a stone womb, with no signs of trauma, no pathway in, and no exit out. The moa remains were carefully removed in 1987 and sent to Canterbury Museum. A week later, a second expedition returned to the chamber. But the vault was gone, collapsed. Not caved in, vaporized. The chamber's ceiling and inner wall had fallen inward, reducing the once intact cavity to shattered limestone fragments and dust. Radiation scans showed nothing unusual. No gas leaks, no temperature shifts, no tremors in the surrounding region, The chamber was simply gone, as though whatever sealed it had only waited long enough to witness the removal. One explorer described the site afterward as wrongly silent, like the cave had swallowed its own voice. Some now speculate the vault was a containment chamber, never meant to be opened. Others believe it was a form of preservation, not for us, but for something returning. And whatever happened the week it was breached suggests someone was still watching. In 2014, halfway across the Pacific, on the island of Kauai, a collapsed lava tube exposed the skeleton of a Hawaiian flightless rail, another extinct species. Its body was positioned unnaturally upright, propped against basalt. Carved into its ribs were identical marks to those on the Mount Owen moa. The same swirl, the same slashes, the same triangle. These birds were never known to share habitat. Their extinction timelines don't overlap, and yet the marks match perfectly. This has led some to propose the unthinkable. A common handler, a shared hand, someone or something that moved between islands, species, and centuries, leaving signs only visible long after both creatures turned to bone. No culture claims these carvings, no people recall the practice. Yet here it is, mirrored across species, separated by time and ocean, preserved in places never meant to be seen. And the one thing both sites have in common: no living witness, only the bones remain. Tucked into the flat, wind-swept grasslands of Armstrong County, Texas, lies a burial site, unlike any other in the Southern Plains. Discovered accidentally in 2009 during a pipeline survey, Armstrong Field revealed more than 200 human skeletons. But what shocked researchers wasn't the quantity, it was the structure. Many bodies were incomplete, but not randomly damaged. They were systematically reduced to femurs, long bones stacked in circular clusters, like spokes of a wheel. No skulls, no ribs, just long bones, arranged with mathematical precision, as if their shape held more value than the person they once supported. Initial theories ranged from native ossuary practices to colonial bone gathering, but the pattern didn't match either. These weren't cremation leftovers. They were intentionally disarticulated and arranged, and not in burial pits, just below the surface, inches beneath what looked like empty prairie. And the date? Pre-Columbian, possibly as old as 900 CE. But the tribes in this region don't claim them. No oral history, no tradition, nothing but silence. Once the layout of Armstrong Field was mapped, archaeologists noticed something eerie. Every femur cluster pointed the same direction, 12 degrees northeast. That angle wasn't symbolic. It matched the historical path of a now vanished oxbow bend in the nearby Prairie Dog Town fork of the Red River. The river doesn't flow that way anymore. It shifted centuries ago, but somehow these people, or whoever arranged their remains, knew precisely where it had once curved. Not just directionally, but to the meter. That kind of geomorphic memory is rare, impossible, if these were truly prehistoric burials. Even more puzzling, the site was constructed on high ground, away from the floodplain, suggesting the river wasn't a threat. It was a beacon. Were the dead meant to watch it, or was it watching them? And if this was ceremonial, where are the artifacts? No jewelry, no weapons, no tools, just femurs, pointed toward the ghost of water. Bioarchaeologists analyzing the femurs expected to find clean post-mortem separation. Instead, several bones showed osteoblastic scarring, a sign that trauma occurred shortly before death, while blood still flowed, not one, not two, dozens. The implications are grim. Whoever these people were, they weren't buried after dying. They were buried as part of their dying, and the injuries were uniform. Femurs removed with surgical precision, clean cuts at the joint, no defensive wounds elsewhere on the skeletons. It was as if this procedure was standardized, rehearsed. The age ranges were even more chilling. Most of the bones belonged to young adults and adolescents, between 14 and 27. No infants, no elders, just the prime of life, disassembled and buried under sun-bleached soil, in perfect radial patterns. If this was a form of sacrifice, it's not like anything seen elsewhere on the continent. And if it wasn't, then something else was happening here, something that needed flesh to move, but bone to remain. One of the most baffling discoveries at Armstrong Field came not from the bones, but from the dirt. The soil directly beneath the burial clusters was fossilized lows, undisturbed by fire pits, trash heaps, or tools. There were no signs of human activity, no settlements, no domestic refuse, nothing to suggest a living community had ever existed there. It was a field of death, placed with exacting care atop a place no one lived. This leads to a chilling theory, that Armstrong Field wasn't part of a society, it was outside of it, a designated zone, a place reserved for something else, not a cemetery, but a delivery site. Bodies were brought here from elsewhere, processed, and left. Left for who? The prairie wind never stops moving here, and the layout, the radial bone spokes, can only be truly seen from above, like a signal, like a message laid flat, meant to be read by something that never walked. In 2015, a secondary excavation expanded the radius of Armstrong Field. What they found outside each radial bone cluster was worse than the bones, perfect burn circles, 4 feet wide, in the dry grass just beyond each grave. But the burn patterns were not random. They were chemical, not fire. A type of residue had leached into the soil, creating carbon scorches without heat. No ash, no ignition source, just a memory of combustion, recorded chemically. Soil analysis revealed traces of calcium phosphate, and a compound similar to potassium dichromate, a modern industrial chemical. But this site predates industry, and even stranger, the pattern of these burns, always on the outer edge of the radial burials, suggests containment. Were the bones kept in, or something kept out? Local wildlife avoid the site entirely. Even after burial, ground sensors pick up no insect activity in the clusters, no ants, no beetles, no scavengers, as if death itself refuses to feed here. During aerial LiDAR scans, engineers discovered something unexpected, a complete dead zone of electromagnetic activity centered exactly over Armstrong Field. GPS drops out. Radios go silent, even animal tags go dark. This isn't just odd, it's scientifically troubling. The region shows no ferrous mineral concentration, no rare earth deposits, no underground water interference. And yet the field sits like a magnetic silence bomb, erasing signal and distorting compass readings by up to 18 degrees. The phenomenon has been tested repeatedly. It's always there, always quiet, as if the earth itself is holding its breath over this patch of grass and bone. Some believe the site was once part of a sky burial system, but the evidence contradicts it. No birds come, no animals graze, no roots grow through the bones. It's not a ruin, it's not a tomb, it's a boundary between the living and something else. In 2018, a team of German and Norwegian glaciologists, conducting satellite ice penetration radar scans over Queen Maud Land, Antarctica, detected something utterly unexpected, a geometrically perfect cavity hidden 2 miles beneath the surface of the ice sheet. Unlike typical meltwater pockets, this void was tall, wide, and rectangular, roughly 300 feet long, 50 feet wide, and 40 feet high. It wasn't a natural cave. The radar image showed flat plains, clean angles, and a floor that reflected radar waves more sharply than the surrounding ice, suggesting a solid, possibly metallic base. This room, as the team dubbed it, was sealed from all sides. No connecting tunnels, no water flow, no signs of collapse or geological disruption. How it formed, and who or what may have built it, remains unknown. What is certain, it predates the ice above it, meaning it has been buried for at least 12,000 years. Radar scans from the cavity's lower echo lines indicated anomalously high reflectivity, not from ice, sediment, or stone, but from something dense and structured. The return wave patterns mimic those of wrought alloy, specifically materials not naturally found in Antarctic geology. Magnetometer data from above the ice revealed a subtle magnetic anomaly exactly above the chamber, not strong enough to suggest industrial machinery, but enough to confirm something metallic lies beneath. It has the signature of oxidized bronze or treated copper, but at depths and temperatures where metal cannot form naturally. Some theorists jumped to conclusions: ancient machines, alien structures, lost civilizations. But even cautious researchers were forced to admit no glacial movement, no tectonic event, and no known process could have shaped such a cavity, this deep beneath Antarctic ice. And then came the chilling detail. The chamber appears to be hollow, but pressurized, meaning something inside is holding its shape from within. A series of European Space Agency (ESA) satellite thermal scans showed another anomaly. Despite being miles below the coldest surface temperatures on Earth, the area directly above the subglacial chamber registered periodic thermal spikes, rising by 7 to 12 degrees Celsius, then vanishing within hours. There was no surface melt, no geothermal vents nearby, no volcanic activity in the region, and the temperature changes were not seasonal, they were rhythmic, occurring roughly every 18 days. Like a cycle, a breath, a signal. A team was dispatched to conduct core drilling nearby, but had to halt operations due to equipment malfunctions. 4 separate digital instruments refused to store data. One began to emit low-frequency static before completely burning out. An electromagnetic scan was ordered, but by the time the team returned 3 weeks later, the signal was gone. The heat spikes stopped. The chamber remained silent, waiting. In 2020, unrelated scans near Lake Vostok, another subglacial Antarctic site, revealed similar dimensions and orientation to the Queen Maud Land chamber: parallel walls, rectangular form, pressure cavity. But Lake Vostok's void was collapsed, the upper ice layers having crushed it sometime in the last 1,000 years. However, a recovered core sample from its edge revealed a fused slab of crystalline rock, etched with microscopic parallel grooves, a surface too smooth for glacial erosion, too patterned for coincidence. When the data from both sites were compared, researchers noted that the angular ratios between walls, floor, and height matched perfectly, down to 0.2 degrees. Across thousands of miles and separate ice masses, identical rooms, buried in ice, that should have never known geometry. There is no theory for this, no model, only 2 possibilities remain. The sites are connected by origin, or they were built by something that moved through Antarctica before it froze. In March 2021, a solar flare struck Earth's magnetosphere, triggering auroras and radiation spikes. But deep sensor seismographs in Queen Maud Land recorded something stranger: high-frequency pulses, not from above, but from beneath the ice. These were not quakes, not ice shifts. The pulses had perfect spacing, 10 pulses over 60 seconds, then silence. 2 hours later, 10 more. What's more disturbing, the pulses were only detected during the solar storm's peak, as if the chamber below had been awakened by radiation. Then, like a sleeper sensing the light, it went still again. Several instruments on the site's edge began recording minor static, repeating signals at 3-second intervals, which terminated exactly at midnight UTC. The transmission was never decoded. Some researchers believe the pulses were just natural stress shifts in the ice, but others insist that something below was reacting to the sun, to the noise, or maybe to us. In the latest high-resolution radar scans, a team from Tromsø University detected a faint but repeating structure pressed into the chamber's north-facing wall, a shape with 2 concentric rectangles nested within a third vertical column. It was first dismissed as radar noise, until the same symbol appeared in 3 separate scan layers, each taken weeks apart under different atmospheric conditions. It wasn't signal interference. The symbol does not match any known runes, sigils, or geoglyphs. It's not military, not geological. It's a stamp, but imprinted into ice and rock at an angle suggesting it was created after the structure froze. Some speculate it's a warning, others a signature. But the implications remain terrifying. If the symbol was created after the freeze, then someone reached the cavity long after it was buried. No expedition has reached the site. No footage exists, only data. But every year, the ice above thins, and whatever waits 2 miles beneath it, in silence and pressure and cold, hasn't moved. Yet, deep within the jungle of Campeche, Mexico, between known Mayan ruin sites and uncharted rainforest, there exists a rectangular region nicknamed by satellite analysts as Zone Ticalak. For decades, aerial photography from NASA and ESA showed only dense canopy, no ruins, no anomalies, nothing but green. Until the time-lapse review. Between 2001 and 2011, a project comparing multi-seasonal shadows across deforestation sites revealed a recurring shadow pattern in Zone Ticalak. Every equinox, as the sun reached peak alignment, a grid of vertical shadows appeared, clearly cast by structures at least 30 feet tall. Yet, when drones were dispatched, nothing was there. No pillars, no temples, no ruins, just soil, vines, and trees. The jungle was real, the shadows were real, but no structure existed to cast them. As of 2024, the phenomenon continues to repeat. Twice a year, for 17 minutes each time, the phantom pillars return, silent, casting shadows that have no source. In 2015, a joint Mexican-French archaeological team, led by biologist Lucien Verret, mounted a weeks-long ground expedition to the Ticalak zone. Using LiDAR, they uncovered what appeared to be a perfect square of stone tiles, 40 meters wide, some still locked into place, others scattered like teeth. But there were no visible columns, no collapsed architecture, no broken blocks or foundations. Only the floor remained, flat, sterile, and eerily unworn, as if no one had ever walked upon it. Carbon testing of root systems below the tile layer placed it at over 1,800 years old, matching Mayan Classic period timelines. But no Mayan records mention this site. No altars, no carvings, no gods, and most disturbing of all, magnetic compass readings on the stone floor fail completely every time. The moment you step into the square, direction vanishes. It's as if the pillars never stood in stone, but still insist on existing in light. In a desperate attempt to verify the shadows, the team returned with infrared sensors. During the 2017 equinox, they set up thermal cameras from trees overlooking the site. At exactly 12:04 p.m., 8 vertical heat columns appeared, measuring 20-30 degrees hotter than the surrounding jungle. These columns matched the shadows seen in satellite footage, but thermal imaging also revealed something far worse. The heat didn't reflect off surrounding objects. It was self-contained, like an object that emits heat but doesn't displace air, soil, or plant life. The team watched in real time as the invisible pillars heated the canopy, then vanished again at 12:21 p.m. When the area was measured hours later, no residual heat was found. It was as if the columns had never been there at all. Except for one thing, a single tree near the southern corner had developed a perfectly vertical burn scar, not from flame, but from radiant heat, as if the column had touched it. As if it had been real, just briefly. In 2019, a fragment of a little-known Mayan codex, known as the Ix-Canal leaf, was re-examined using multispectral scanning. Scholars had long assumed the faded image depicted tall corn stalks growing over a ceremonial plaza, but with image enhancement, a new layer was revealed beneath the paint. 8 vertical pillars, floating just above the earth, with no visible base. Below them a perfect stone grid, matching the dimensions of the Ticalak square. The glyph accompanying the image translates roughly as, "When the air holds the weight, the gods return." Some scholars dismiss it as metaphor, describing the solstice. Others now wonder, was this site never meant to be touched? Was it a temple not of stone, but of light? And if the pillars were never built, only projected, what force continues to cast their shadow every equinox, centuries after their builders are gone? 500 meters from the Phantom Plaza lies a narrow cave system, previously undocumented. On March 20th, 2022, during the shadow event, sensors placed inside the cave recorded a sustained low-frequency hum, clocked at 18.7 Hz, the same infrasonic range linked to disorientation, dread, and hallucinations. No natural source was found. The cave is dry, no water, no airflow. The hum started and stopped exactly with the shadow duration. Even more bizarre, a team member reported nosebleeds and extreme nausea while standing at the cave's entrance, symptoms that disappeared the moment he stepped outside. When equipment was checked, all devices malfunctioned within 30 meters of the cave mouth, only during the shadow period. Afterward, the cave returned to silence. The readings ended, but a theory had formed that the plaza, the shadows, and the cave were part of a single ritual machine, a mechanism not built to last, but built to reawaken under very specific celestial alignments. In 2023, a new anomaly emerged, 14 kilometers southeast of the Ticalak site. A separate valley, flat, unremarkable, with no ruins, began displaying similar shadow formations during solstices, this time 12 vertical forms, each 18 meters tall. Again, no source, no mass, no structure. But this site contains no floor grid, no glyphs, no history. It's not a ruin, it's a blank page. So why do the shadows appear there? Some now believe that Ticalak is not a site, but a symptom. That the shadows are not remnants of a structure, but an echo of something returning, moving slowly, aligning, arriving. Not ghosts, not hallucinations. A structure not made of stone or metal or bone, but of timing itself. In the scorched wilderness of the Tanezrouft Basin, one of the most desolate, lifeless regions on Earth, a 2012 satellite survey captured a pattern no one expected. Amid endless dunes and dried rock, a perfect octagonal depression emerged, 1.2 kilometers across, symmetrical, angular, and precise. To the naked eye on the ground, it's invisible. There's no elevation, no color difference, but infrared and elevation mapping show it clearly. An imprint pushed into the earth, with no rubble, no walls, no remains. It's not a natural formation. The angle of its corners is too consistent, its depth too uniform. One geophysicist described it as an outline of something that once pressed into the planet, then was lifted away. No nearby settlements, no trade paths, no water, just a scar that forms a perfect geometry in the middle of nowhere. And yet, buried in that silence, lies a presence you can feel but not touch. A geological team from Algiers conducted ground-level sampling in 2016. What they found was unsettling. Under just 20 centimeters of sand, the soil beneath the octagonal depression was densely compacted, as though massive weight had pressed down upon it long ago. Pressure mapping software revealed load points, suggesting columns or support beams once stood in a precise array. Not haphazard, not eroded, removed cleanly. Even stranger, the soil within the octagon contains magnetite deposits, unusual in this region, and only found under the footprint. This implies that the structure itself was magnetically active, or intentionally placed with materials foreign to the area. But there are no ruins, no tools, no shattered stone, only where it used to be. What force lifts an entire building, leaves no trace, and burns its shape into the planet like a brand? A breakthrough came in 2018 when researchers uncovered a fragment of a 14th century Berber trade map that referenced a forbidden stretch of desert called El Makan Yatanufas al-Ramal, the place that breathes dust. The fragment described a giant shape, abandoned and forgotten, where the sand never rests, and the wind turns in circles like a blind hawk. Some dismissed it as myth, but when overlaid onto modern satellite coordinates, the described trade path led straight to the Tanezrouft octagon. No caravan routes passed through it, no Bedouin camps, no tombs, nothing ever touched it again, as if the region itself had been marked, not as sacred, but as quarantined. And yet in the silence of those desert winds, something hums, not sound, but memory, spiraling endlessly across unbroken sands. Biological testing of soil samples taken from within and outside the octagon revealed a startling anomaly. While the desert itself harbors trace extremophile life, bacteria, spores, and ancient microbial crusts, the area inside the octagon has no active microorganisms. None. Not dormant. Not sparse. Absent. The soil behaves like it was sterilized, not recently, but permanently. Even moisture simulations failed to stimulate growth. This is not common in deserts. Even the most barren sandscapes teem with microbial fossils. But within this shape, the land behaves like it was scorched clean, not by fire, but by design, like something was kept here and had to be forgotten. If this was a dwelling, it wasn't for people. If it was a temple, it wasn't for gods. It may not have been built for us at all. While conducting a subsurface radar survey along the southern border of the octagon, the team struck something solid, a single obsidian slab, 6 feet long, buried flat, just 60 centimeters under the sand. It had no inscriptions, no chisel marks, perfectly polished on one side, shattered on the other. When excavated, the slab emitted a measurable static charge, despite no wires, no magnetic field, and no weather system in the region that could generate such energy. It was made of non-native obsidian, traced chemically to a volcanic source over 800 miles away. Someone brought it here, buried it, and then left it under the exact edge of the vanished structure, like a foundation peg or a lock. But what did it hold down? What broke it? And why is every fragment missing, except this one piece, this one corner of silence? The most recent analysis in 2023 revealed a detail missed by all previous studies. Over a decade of satellite footage, when layered frame by frame, shows that the sands within the octagon shift in a spiraling pattern, even when winds are steady from a single direction. The pattern repeats every 19.7 months, forming a counterclockwise whirl, visible only when speeded up and magnified. This suggests something below the surface is influencing airflow, not through temperature or terrain, but through geometry itself. This is not airflow from terrain, it's movement without movement, as if the ground remembers the shape that once pressed upon it, and still tries to breathe around its ghost. The desert doesn't bury everything. Sometimes it preserves the void more powerfully than the monument. And in Tanezrouft, it's not the presence of ruins that confounds science, it's the shape of absence itself, sharp, perfect, and never meant to fade. Near the southern edge of the Okinawa Trench, about 14 kilometers west of the famed Yonaguni Monument, Japanese marine geophysicists, conducting sonar mapping in 2009, discovered something not made of coral, reef, or tectonic displacement. At a depth of 1,320 meters, sonar bounced off a structure shaped like a domed vault, roughly 40 meters wide. Initial theories linked it to the Yonaguni Monument, a disputed sunken city. But this anomaly is completely different. Rounded, metallic in echo, and perfectly sealed. No entrances. No erosion lines. No silt buildup. Just a smooth, arching form, like a sunken observatory with no windows. For years it was dismissed as a radar fluke. But a 2016 revisit with high-resolution multi-beam sonar confirmed it. A completely symmetrical structure, resting intact, deep in crushing pressure. It is not made of limestone or basalt. Its signal reflects like hardened alloy, but there's no known wreckage in the area, no ship, no submarine. No crash, just a vault, lying dormant, and never breaking. In 2020, a mini ROV drone was launched from a Japanese research vessel to get visual confirmation. After hours of descent and calibration, it reached the dome and revealed something impossible. Along the underside of the curved ceiling, the camera picked up a reflective, undisturbed air pocket, trapped beneath the vault's interior for centuries. Air beneath the sea, at crushing depth, with no known cavity in the structure, no opening, no collapse. The air pocket glimmered in the ROV's floodlight, like mercury, completely stable. There was no aquatic life inside, no algae, no barnacles, nothing. And then for 7 seconds, the ROV's light flickered. In that moment, a shadow appeared, something geometric, embedded in the center of the dome ceiling, like a relief carving or protrusion. But when the light returned to normal, it was gone. The footage remains archived, still debated, still unresolved. But one thing was confirmed: the dome is not hollow, but it is not solid either. Marine ecosystems flourish even on sunken trash. Coral clings to old tires. Fish spawn in sunken ships. But here, nothing. Across all expeditions to the vault, scientists have found that no fish, no plankton, no coral, not even scavengers approach within 20 meters of the structure. It's as if the ocean itself knows to avoid it. Water samples taken at the boundary show no toxins, no salinity changes, and no temperature shift. But ROVs malfunction frequently when breaching that zone. Gyroscopes spin erratically, visual feeds cut out, and onboard lights often flicker. One diver, briefly lowered in a pressurized pod, reported extreme nausea and a piercing headache, even though cabin pressure remained stable. He described a low buzz in the center of his spine, though no sound was heard on mics. When asked what it felt like, he said, "Like something beneath me had just noticed." In late 2022, a Chinese survey team conducting deep-sea magnetic field mapping in the same region detected pulses of harmonic vibration, barely detectable but consistent, coming from the location of the vault. They repeated in exact patterns every 13.7 days, a half-lunar cycle. The frequencies weren't natural. They weren't tectonic, volcanic, or seismic. They were perfect octaves, within the range of machine-like precision. No other geological source has ever produced this type of regular harmonic sound, and no human-made transmitter is located anywhere near. The signals didn't vary by depth. They were emanating upward, like a beacon beneath the sea, then stopping completely. As if on a timer, the team proposed they were resonance echoes caused by tectonic tension, but the shape of the pulses suggested not reaction, but transmission. Transmission to what? Samples scraped from the vault's outer layer revealed mineral accretions. Unlike other ocean crusts, beneath the calcium and silicate was a thin sheet of manganese oxide, which under scanning electron microscopy revealed non-random etching. They looked like symbols, but not alphabetic, not Mayan, not Sanskrit, not digital code. Tiny lines, repeating patterns, and triangular sequences, smaller than the head of a pin, microscopic, and spaced with machine precision. Several researchers believe it's crystallization, but the pattern was too consistent. One Japanese cryptologist suggested the arrangement was not a message, but a compression pattern, like data storage, imprinted into the skin of the structure itself. If this is true, then the vault is not just a chamber, it's an archive. Of what, we don't know, but the idea of a machine, or a vessel, built to hold information, buried beneath the sea before recorded history, has changed the tone of every expedition since. In the most recent survey in March 2024, a passive sonar sweep revealed something even more unsettling. A second structure, almost identical in shape and size, buried deeper, 2 kilometers to the north, under the seafloor, not exposed. It appears to be tilted and partially collapsed, but it mirrors the first vault's dimensions exactly. This means the original dome was not alone. It was part of something larger, possibly a network, possibly a system, and only one vault remains accessible, and that raises the ultimate question. If the second vault failed, and the first remained, what was stored in the first? That had to be preserved. Or worse, what broke out of the second, that didn't need to be. Archaeologists working independently across the Tarim Basin, China, the Göbekli Foothills, Turkey, and the Chott El Djerid Salt Flats, Tunisia discovered something that sent shockwaves through comparative archaeology in 2021. Buried beneath layers of sediment in all three sites were identical stone grid foundations, each forming a 12 by 12 square layout with a hollow center. These sites are separated by over 6,000 kilometers, have no recorded trade connection, and belong to vastly different civilizations and timelines. Yet the foundations share not just shape, but scale, orientation, and building technique. Sandstone tiles, polished smooth, laid in identical clockwise spirals at the outer edges. The centers were always empty, always clean, as if something once stood there, then vanished cleanly, leaving the grid behind. Researchers dubbed it the Kharasahr pattern, after the first site where it was discovered, beneath an unrecorded mound near the dried ruins of an ancient Silk Road oasis town. But the pattern isn't the mystery, it's what lies beneath it. Ground-penetrating radar, beneath the grids, revealed not solid earth, but shallow cavities. In each site, a total of 7 subchambers lie under the northeast quadrant of the square. Always 7, always empty, and always sealed. During lunar perigees, when the moon is closest to Earth, seismographs pick up low-frequency vibrations from these cavities, not natural harmonics, not echoes. These pulses occur once every 13 days, last for 11 minutes, and then fall silent. Not during earthquakes, not during weather events, only during very specific lunar alignments. The sound, inaudible to the ear, is felt in the body. Researchers standing near the chambers report tightness in the chest, strange dreams that night, and in some cases, nosebleeds and disorientation. No technology is found in these sites, no tools, no relics, but the chambers still hum, like a chorus with no voice, waiting to begin the second verse. Excavations into the center of the grids, where no structure remains, revealed a thin black layer, only 1.2 centimeters thick, comprised of carbon-rich particulates, with no soot structure. It's not ash, it's not coal, it's not volcanic residue, it's burnt organic matter, but nothing was ever burned there. Carbon dating places, the layer between 5,800 BCE and 3,200 BCE, a time span that overlaps none of the visible cultures in the region. The layer is uniform, resting gently atop stone, undisturbed, as if something caught fire and was erased before the flames could finish. And beneath that layer, nothing, no relics, no walls, no grave, only the echo of presence, a heat that came from nowhere and left a shadow without a flame. Scattered across unrelated historical manuscripts, Avestan chants from Persia, lost verses in the Book of Enoch, and an untranslated Akkadian tablet, held in the Istanbul Archaeological Museum, appears a repeating phrase, the city where the stars once landed, but now cannot be named. Other texts refer to the gate that swallowed itself, or the voice in the square. Though fragmented, all texts agree on one point. Something was once located where Kharasahr now shows only desert, a structure with no walls, that was seen from above, not from the ground. No maps list it, no empires claim it, but for thousands of years, across distant civilizations, a shared silence was remembered, not as a myth, as a warning. In 2023, a time-lapse comparison of satellite thermal scans over the 3 Kharasahr pattern sites revealed a terrifying consistency. Once every 19 years, a faint thermal shadow of the original structure appears, during a rare lunar solar cycle. It doesn't appear in daylight, nor infrared, only in thermal shift imaging, just before dawn. The shadow matches a tower-like structure, roughly 90 feet tall, centered over the void in the stone grid. No structure is actually there. The land is flat, but the heat pattern returns, perfectly vertical, as if something massive is phasing into temperature, but not into space. When overlaid across all three sites, the heat shadow is identical in size and form. This has led to speculation that the sites may be anchors, like receiver points for something no longer physically present, or worse, something returning in cycles. Finally, in 2024, at the Tarim Basin site, archaeologists unearthed 6 human skeletons buried just beyond the grid's northwest corner. The bodies were twisted, fetal, and buried without adornment. Inside the molars of all 6 skeletons, micro-laser imaging revealed identical etchings, only visible at high magnification. A spiral surrounded by 12 dots, exactly matching the grid's shape, with the void in the center. These symbols were not carved post-mortem. The etching was done while the teeth were still forming, deep within the gum line. This means the people were born marked, their bodies shaped with symbols of a structure that wasn't physically present at the time. No other burial in the region or the world shows this anomaly. Who buried them? Who marked them? And why did every Kharasahr site vanish at the same time across 3 continents, with only their foundations remaining? Some say the city never existed, but the shadows disagree. Not all ruins crumble. Some are erased so cleanly they leave nothing behind but a pulse, a shadow, a silence, a line of heat that doesn't match the landscape. You've just crossed deserts without maps, caves without echoes, and oceans that hide chambers no eye was meant to see. These aren't just lost places, they are refusals. Refusals to be understood, named, or even remembered. The stones won't explain themselves, the bones won't confess, and the light still bends around places it shouldn't. You haven't reached the end of history, you've reached its blind spot. We'll return soon, but until then, keep your compass steady, not toward what's known, but toward the places where the past resists your gaze. Because some ruins weren't meant to be uncovered, some truths weren't buried, they were sealed shut for a reason. This has been Unburied Mysteries, and this was only part 1.